After we selected or paired typefaces, then working with type is a critical step in our design process. Typesetting is an important method of setting the text in a layout on a page. It dictates how well our design will be and will it be pleasing and enjoyable to the reader. A typographic scale gives a rhythm to our design. It makes the type look consistent across the whole project. I usually set my scale during the project, not at the very beginning, like the first thing. I like to have a flexibility when I start and to test a content a bit, to understand it better. You can construct your own scale or use some existing solution like modular scale, whatever suits you and the project better. Construction of a grid depends on the project needs. You could use 2-column grid or 3-column grid or 4. You get the point. For more flexibility, or if a project requires, you can go even to have 24-column grid, or it can be horizontal and vertical, like a tablecloth grid. Grids are an essential part when it comes to arranging elements into a layout, but they are here to help us, not to restrain us. They should be looked at like a signpost. You don't want it in your face all the time, but when you need a help with your orientation, you should be able to quickly glance them and get a help with your direction. Kerning is a process of adjusting the space between characters in a proportional typeface, while spacing or tracking is adjusting the same amount of space at once between the characters. It's the overall spacing between the letters. Kerning is about visual space, not the actual space. It needs to feel right. Most of the body text doesn't need to be spaced or rarely needs. Maybe for smaller sizes when it needs to improve in legibility, we would then add a positive spacing. And for headlines, more often yes. The bigger the headline, the more it needs some negative spacing because of the size and optical harmony. Sometimes when designers want to achieve a certain aesthetic, they have a tendency to increase the line height. While that's good to some extent, keep an eye on this one. Most of the arranged paragraphs out there have their line height too big. There's a funny saying that goes, your lines are so apart of each other that a small boat can sail between them. And it's also much harder to read, because your eyes, when finishing with one line, has to make a big jump to the next line, and it gets tiring from a lot of jumping. Same goes in other direction. I understand that there is sometimes need to make the text tighter as a form of artistic direction, but be thoughtful about it. If we have longer lines in width, then it has to have a little bit more spacing between the lines. And for the shorter line length, it needs to have less spacing between the lines. How to determine the line length? How wide should the paragraph be? The same principles about reading applies. Use your best judgment. The default alignment should be left in the west part of the world. It's much easier to read. It's more natural. Particularly if there is more text to read, it becomes annoying if it's center aligned. For the smaller amount of text, it's good, it's okay. Like always, try to take your judgment on it. Keep in mind that center text is more strict or formal, serious like a tombstone. Watch out about the vertical spacing of the headlines and paragraph. In this example, it's not clear where the last headline belongs to. The proximity is not right. That's better. Those who are grouped together belongs together. And here's the side-by-side comparison. One more thing to be aware about paragraph vertical spacing. Even if it looks cleaner and more spaced, it is much harder to read if the paragraphs are so much a part of each other. It needs to feel natural and easy to follow. We already talked about contrast in the third chapter. You can achieve it by size, style, color, position, or weight. Use it to create an interest in your design. And a point of focus.